So 3 things you'll get out of today. I'm going to try and demonstrate that potential for you, outline some pitfalls, and some real-world examples of the whole thing in action. So, as I said, I'm the founder of a company called Imvizar. We have been creating spatial storytelling experiences all around the world for the last few years. We have over 120 experiences, I think 130 now, in 11 countries. We're the augmented reality partner for Salesforce. We've delivered experiences for them in Ireland, the UK, Australia, Japan, India, the US. So the kind of common, although there's like themes here around employee engagement, fan engagement, and visitor engagement to tourist attractions, the common theme and common denominator in them all is that we create experiences at locations and bring locations to life with storytelling. This is some visuals of what they look like. So you can see the fan engagement on the left-hand side there, some of the employee engagement stuff in the middle. So ultimately all locations and bringing them to life with spatial stories. So this is the type of location I was talking about earlier. I think when anybody looks at any of these, you know that they're significant. Many of them are wonders of the world and that type of thing. They're obviously significant locations, Petra in Jordan, the Christ the Redeemer, the Taj Mahal, that type of thing. So they're obviously very significant locations. Then when you look at places like this, it's maybe slightly more or slightly less obvious, but I still look at these and think, why are these things here? And how can we try and explain those stories a bit beyond what you typically get is the little bronze plaque you see on the left-hand side there. How can we bring that bronze plaque to life? Or one step further, these locations really don't look like there's any stories to tell. One is a pretty grim looking room, and the one on the right hand side is a very corporate environment. So I'm going to show you each of these 4 locations in a second, and how you can bring each of them to life. Before I dive into it, I want to distinguish between 2 types of augmented reality and how we look at it internally. The first is focused on social sharing, and then the second is spatial storytelling. So our focus is definitely on spatial storytelling. We see social sharing as like a sub 20-second experience. It tends to focus on brand awareness, and the motivation is the number of eyeballs and number of shares for that experience. Whereas with spatial storytelling, it's slightly longer form content, typically 60 to 90 seconds. It tends to focus more on the story, and the motivation is the emotional connection to the content and to the place in the moment. So spatial storytelling is what this talk is all about, and not the stuff on the left-hand side. So to give you some examples of what they look like, these are experiences which we see all the time, lenses and filters on Snapchat and Instagram on your face. They've been obviously very successful the last 10 to 15 years. The one on the right-hand side there is slightly more spatial, but still a social sharing focus. So it was an experience created by Louis Vuitton to demonstrate their new pattern. It was using Snap's landmarks, and you could do the dotty pattern on the landmarks. So look, I suppose the big thing for that one is it's clearly a spatial experience, but the focus there is for it to be cool enough for people to take a quick video and share it on social media. It's not really about you standing at the Eiffel Tower and like really enjoying the experience. It's much more focused on social sharing. The 2 experiences on the right here are more location-based storytelling experiences. So the top one is what used to be Anastasia Fleming's silversmith shop. It's a very hard one to say. So in this experience, when you hold up your phone to it, she walks out of what is now a jeweler shop, and then her old shop front is recreated, and you're told about the story of her and her shop in this city. And then on the one at the bottom is a crystal factory. So they wanted to bring to life how the old furnaces were used, and they wanted to use the outside where the furnaces actually used to be to demonstrate what crystal making used to look like. So to dig into, I'm going to kind of like dig into a little bit of the theory. Hopefully this isn't, I'm going to try and keep this as light as possible and then go into demos as quickly as possible. But we kind of see a spatial storytelling experience as a mix of a digital story and then a story in a place. So it's something digital and then a place that the spatial story sits in the middle. So ultimately this spatial storytelling combines digital content with physical places and location-based narratives. The goal here, and I think if anybody read the brief on this talk, the goal is really to try and cross the chasm of emotional resonance, right? So try and cross this chasm from things being really gimmicky and floating all the time to having meaning and making you feel really connected to the content and to the place. So that's why we're focusing on location-based augmented reality or spatial storytelling. the two, I think where we're trying to get to with this is that as an end user, you believe that what you're seeing is either plausible or believable or both, right? So if you, and I'm going to show you some examples now of where it goes wrong, but if you can get to a point where, like, obviously, if you see I don't know, an airplane in here in augmented reality flying around, obviously it's not really happening, but it's plausible enough and believable enough, right? But if that airplane then keeps flying through where that wall is and then you still see it, then you lose the connection to it because it doesn't make sense to your brain anymore. If it's flying in this space, it makes sense. As soon as it crosses the space there where there's a wall, it doesn't make sense anymore. So we're trying to get to the point of content being plausible or believable. And then if you get there, you get reactions like this. So these are some of the experiences we've launched in a place called Spike Island in Ireland. So I think maybe something to take away from this, people obviously won't remember what you said, maybe not remember anything that I've said today, but hopefully how it makes you feel maybe even from seeing some of the examples. And I think giving context to a place that you're in visually through user movement is super important. So very briefly to run through these, we believe that there's 5 key elements to spatial storytelling to create an emotional connection to the place. The first being the location. It's like of utmost importance. So if you're telling a story, and if you tell a story in almost any other medium, you will typically start with the story, the research, and then write a script or write a narrative. We say that you shouldn't do that, and actually you should leave that to the very last thing. So look at the location, then look at what visuals you would like to add to that location and how it can enhance the place that you're in. So if you're in somewhere where there's ruins of a castle, it's pretty obvious that you're going to try and bring the castle to life, but maybe think about that first, then think about how the user is going to move around the space. This is probably the most important one, right? Augmented reality is different from any other medium because of user movement. So yes, you can do a bit of movement in 6DoF virtual reality, but with augmented reality, you can move. So you can watch a video, you don't move, you see it from one angle. Augmented reality, you can move and you should move, because if you're not moving, you might as well do it as a video. It's probably going to be cheaper and much quicker to produce, so I'd probably recommend doing that. So user movement is like super important. Then layering in interactivity if you can, and sound. So they're kind of the 5 key elements that we believe are involved in emotional connection in spatial storytelling. So I'm going to show some examples now. This is Spike Island. This is Ireland's Alcatraz. It's actually 8 times the size of Alcatraz. It doesn't really look it here, but a pretty fascinating location. It's 8 times the size of Alcatraz just within the fort walls, right? Pretty fascinating place. What you also can't see from here, because the photos from above, is that it's on a really steep hill, and it's a man-made hill. So in the 1850s, they made the prisoners take soil from the neighboring islands and build up this hill, and then they built the fort on top of it. So a pretty fascinating place. Our goal here is to try and bring the location to life. So it starts with tour guides who meet you at the boat, and then they bring you to the front of the fort, and then it's a self-guided tour. So we built a spatial storytelling experience. It starts at the entrance where you meet the prison guard, and then you go into the punishment block. I'm going to show you what the experiences look like. I should balance this out with these graphics were created like 4 or 5 years ago, so forgive me on the graphics, but you'll get a sense of what it's like from the experience. So what you're seeing here is the prison guard's room. When you walk in, there's nothing there. Within the app, you're told to hold up your phone, and the prison guard appears, the fire appears, and then you hit play and the scene plays out.
Prisoner 958, you have been sent here because you have broken the code of silence. On the 12th of April, in the year of our Lord, 1862, you were apprehended attempting to speak to another inmate. The Spike Island Code of Silence is in place to prohibit prisoners from ever conspiring with each other. You will now be sent to your punishment cell.
Next stop on the Spike Island experience is the punishment.
So, a couple of things. Obviously, the location is super important there, right? Really, really important. The AR visuals to give you not just the guard, and obviously we have lots of things with characters and Uncanny Valley and whatever else, but to have the character of the guard there, but then also to have the fire lit, right? So all the way down to the last thing I mentioned, which was sound. When you're in this room, what we wanted to give a sense of is this is where warmth was, and as a guard there was much better conditions, because the room you go into next is really grim. It was the punishment cell, and the prisoners were blindfolded and chained to the wall for 23.5 hours per day, right? So we wanted to give that contrast. So this, you can hear the crackling of the fire, you can feel that it's warmth, even though your man's a little bit aggressive and kind of looks a bit funny. But then the next one, then you see how difficult the conditions are, which I'll show you.
I can smell the fresh air on your clothes. It's summertime, isn't it? I'm trying to keep track of the days. It was April when I entered this hellhole, and I think it's June now.
So, massive contrast there, right? There's subtleties to what's going on here, but you can't really see it in this video, but the chains actually meet exactly where the hooks were in the wall, where the guy was chained to the wall. It smells in this room. It's damp, it's cold, it's really grim. So whenever I demoed this experience for the very first time, the day we launched it, the owner of the tourist attraction was there with me. I gave the iPad to these two ladies, and they started crying, which I didn't think was good at the time. In hindsight, I think we actually achieved exactly what we wanted to. But one of them said to me that they'd walked around the prison for more than 2 hours. They'd looked at all the pictures, read all the text, but they hadn't really considered the human toll of the place until now, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve. We wanted people to understand how harrowing the conditions were in the location, again, all through spatial storytelling. So one thing to consider as well, what I've given you here is stories that are very much based on the location. The story isn't always about the location within spatial storytelling. So one other way to think about it, you might have a location or a place, and then you want to tell a story about it, which is with the examples that I've just given you. The other thing you can do is use a place to create a more engaging story, right? So it doesn't always have to be about it. And a good example of that is probably the Gorillas experience. If anybody saw that in the last couple of years, they used Times Square in New York and Piccadilly Circus in London to launch their new album. But rather than, this is a bit of a mock-up, and actually this is sometimes where it can go wrong, where it gives a false sense of what it's to look like. But the video here, you'll see they really use the structure of Times Square. They use the billboards, they use the buildings. It looks like the characters are sitting on top of the buildings. So although the Gorillas have nothing to do necessarily with Times Square, it created an experience where you kind of felt like the characters were up there and the speakers were all around you, and it just created a more engaging experience, which you'll see.
Don't be sad for me, I'm a skinny nose. I'm a cartoon G. And my intent is to bring in a new mood. Don't be sad for me.
Don't know how long that video goes on for, so I'll just stop it. So again, look, in terms of unlocking locations for spatial storytelling, it doesn't necessarily have to be a location that is gorilla specific, but they use that location to really bring the story to life. So I showed you these photos earlier. I'm going to run through now very briefly the stories that we've created at these locations. The very first one there on the left-hand side is the first impression statue in the Rocks area of Sydney. Has anybody ever been to Sydney before? Yeah, a couple of people. So this is in the Rocks area. It was at a point in time the slums area of Sydney. There is this statue or monument that's there to commemorate the three types of people that were there. So the military that was there, was a lot of convicts sent from Ireland and the UK, and then there were families that lived there. And actually the place that I just showed you, Spike Island, a lot of the people were sentenced to transportation from there and ended up here, complete opposite ends of the world, and a complete coincidence, so we ended up working in both. What you typically get is the little plaque on the left-hand side which explains what went on, but we worked with a company here to see how we could bring this location to life. So what you get at the start when you hold up your phone is the military guy comes out of his silhouette. He starts telling you a little bit about his background, and then you hear the prisoner, and they're actually always persistent around the statue, so you can walk around them and see them at any time. Then you walk around, you see the convict, he's kind of shouting, and he tells you that he wants to escape. He asks you to break the chains so that he can run off. So if you go up near the chains and you tap on your phone screen, it actually breaks the chains. He then says, well, hey, I'm free, and he runs off, and then the military guy hears that he runs off, and the two of them chase each other down the street. And then when you walk around to the end, then you meet the family and you get their perspective. So you can see this is like a really simple yet effective way of bringing a monument to life and trying to give a bit of context to the people that lived here, but also why this monument is in this place. This is a monument to commemorate where 3 Spanish Armada ships crashed on the west coast of Ireland. So it's to be like in the shape of a bow of a ship. Again, top left, you can see a bronze plaque, which you always get at these locations to tell you a little bit about what happens, but what we wanted to do is to give a little bit of context. Somebody actually made a short film about this story. It's actually pretty fascinating. The captain and the leader of the 3 ships managed to get back onto Ireland at the time the British and the Irish were there. He managed to escape both of them. and then get all the way back to the UK and then back to Belgium, and then tell a story of what happened. So there was a short film made about it. It's pretty fascinating. So we decided to try and bring the location to life with spatial storytelling. But the goal is to utilize the monument of the bow of the ship. So again, taking like number one thing in spatial storytelling, we have the monument of the bow of the ship. How can we use that to our advantage? Probably more importantly, I felt was that there was steps in it. How could we use the steps as part of the experience? So this is a slider that we had originally. Now when you hold up your phone, the content just appears. So we created the full monument of the ship. We actually lined up the steps with the steps in the model with the steps in the ship.
Hola,
so as you walk up,
my name is Captain Francisco de Cuellar
that's
of
Captain
the Spanish
Francisco.
Armada.
And as you walk up the steps, you're actually
ships
walking up the
that
rail
wrecked
steps, and it
just
feels like you're
before
walking up
the
onto the bow of the ship. So a pretty simple use case, but again, using the physical structure of a place to try and bring more context to the location and to the story. I'm going to fly through these just in the interest of time. So this is actually in the Salesforce building in Dublin. It's a large piece of art. Basically, this is like in all of the Salesforce buildings, they have this artist that they work with called Shinji Murakami. He takes monuments within or landmarks within any country, then he creates like a mosaic 8-bit style piece of art. So we wanted to give context for people who weren't from Ireland why this piece of art was there. But this is Shinji.
Where did I go?
And then
This usually means trouble.
then the wall cracks to give context. And then the library that the mosaic is actually about is fully built behind the wall. So it's to give
That is
context
so
of the
cool.
Longham Library. This library
Go on
featured in
and
Harry
walk up
Potter in
close to the
different
wall.
movies.
Can you tell where
So the
we
full
are
library is
in
modeled
design?
behind the wall. So there's like the parallax effect, but if you walk right up to the wall, which I'm doing when I take this video, you get a sense that the full library is there. So really simple way of telling a story based on a location. It's just like a mosaic piece of art, but again, brought it to life through spatial storytelling. And then this last one, this is the children's prison in Spike Island. So I'll show you this video
Reading
first.
the records of these boys' crimes and misdemeanors is heartbreaking. Many were convicted and sent here for simply being homeless, as that had been deemed a crime. David Doran was only 12.
So I'll not play the whole thing out, but this is what it looks like in augmented reality after. So you can see there's loads of things going on here, but when you hold up your phone, the content appears only through your phone. You can't see it behind the wall. And as you walk through, this is a completely empty room, but we've reconstructed the hammocks and the whole structure. There was like 50 young boys in this room at any given time. So the room is completely empty, but through spatial storytelling, we've given context to why, basically the significance of it. Okay, so very briefly, technology and considerations and limitations. So 3 things to think about: field of view, occlusion, and VPS. And I'm going to give you some quick examples of these. So this is what you often see in augmented reality videos. So it looks like it's very immersive, but the truth is it's more like this. So it's kind of like a very small window, certainly with mobile AR, into the world. And actually what you're seeing on the right-hand side, there's a whole scene around him and reconstructions of buildings. So when you're designing these experiences, you need to really consider that there's a really small field of view into the world that you're designing for. The other thing is occlusion. It's like massively important. So I talked earlier about plausibility and believability. The one on the left-hand side does not make sense to our brains. The cat is occupying the same space that the sofa is, or the chair, or whatever it is. The one on the right, the one on the left doesn't make sense. The one on the right does make sense. And then again, this is an example from Niantic. So one on the right makes massive sense because the object goes behind the wall. The one on the left doesn't. So these things are really important if you're thinking about plausibility and believability. And then the last thing, which kind of brings all of this together, is VPS. So VPS is a visual positioning system. There's loads to talk about it here today and has been for the last couple of years. These are the ones that we would definitely recommend. We use all of them at the minute, and they're all, Immersal, Niantic, and Google's Geospatial API, and then Lens Studio have their own, although they announced this morning a partnership with Niantic, so plenty going on in the space. But these things are really key to anchoring content in the real world, so that you don't want the user to ever be involved in placing content or anything like that. You want them to hold up their phone, the content appears around them, and then they're focused on the story and the location, again, not focused on the technology. Okay, I'm gonna not play that video, I think. So I'm gonna just conclude on this. This is Lureo, which is a tool that we've built over the last year. We want to make spatial storytelling more accessible for everyone. So we created world's first no-code AR storytelling platform. anybody can create an experience. There's zero code involved. Basically this is 4 location-based storytelling experiences. So everything I've talked about in terms of VPS and all, that's all in here. There's zero code involved. All the other tools that you talk about their developer community. This is very much for creatives and storytellers, not for developers. Something that we created on it recently, this is a train crash that happened in Dublin in 1901. So this is some photographs of what it looked like. This is us then creating it within the engine. So really it's just a desktop-based engine. You can build the experience quite quickly like this. And then it's like a timeline video editor at the bottom. Once you're happy with the experience, you've added in some audio, then you can hit publish and the experience appears in AR. And that's the photograph. So like really simple to just make location-based experiences almost immediately. One kind of minute. Okay, and then the last thing I'll end on is that we've obviously been a lot of talk about AI here today, and obviously for the last couple of years. So we've built in a huge amount of AI elements to it. We have this concept, which is our spatial storyteller at the minute. So you can, if you have zero experience in animation, design, coding, any of that, but you want to tell a story based on a location and a spatial story, you can go in here, talk to our spatial storyteller. This is programmed based on our knowledge of spatial storytelling. So everything I've talked about today and then a lot of other things that we believe are important in spatial storytelling, we've programmed this engine. So it basically prompts you to think about things that you haven't thought about before. Once it's ready, it then creates the experience. So it generates the story, preview of the story. It actually then creates a story description. It creates the characters. It creates the script. It even creates the audio for each of the characters. If you don't like the audio, so you can listen to the audio within the editor. If you don't like the accent, you can then change the accent. Probably the most important thing for us with all AI.
Robbery last night. Unbelievable.
With all AI engines, it's very much like a slot machine. It's very take it or leave it. What we wanted here is this is fully editable. So at all times, everything is editable by the creator. And then once you're happy, you hit publish. It actually goes into the editor, which that video goes into, but in the interest of time, we'll not continue to play it. And then the experience then appears in AR. So this one's based on Google's geospatial engine. So you can fully build location-based experiences. This one's for 2 butchers in the city of Lisbon in Portugal. So when you hit play here, you see the characters walk out. So some of the real world is there and some of the augmented reality world is there. And I'm going to finish up there. But if anybody wants access to Lureo, we're in closed beta at the minute. So please feel free to scan that. And that's everything.